Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. We are back with another conversation today, and we're going to be talking about something that is happening in the homes of each one of you who's watching today, who's with us today. You're with the Economic Times, and my name is Ashutosh Sinha. Welcome to Accenture Presents the Economic Times Roundtable. Hyper competition streaming now. You would have noticed this, of course. India's OTT industry, or we call it the over-the-top industry, since its services are delivered riding on another platform. So the OTT industry is one of the most competitive amongst the emerging markets with dozens of platforms. What's driving it? Wider adoption of 4G networks, and now 5G is around the corner. High-speed mobile internet services, that is, affordable smartphones, all that has helped. Add to that the pandemic-led surge in consumption, and the drivers for the industry become clearer. Well, you can also see it this way. The stars that you've been so used to seeing on the big screen in movie theaters can now be watched on your smartphone. Ultimately, small is the big opportunity as India gets ready for the OTT revolution, if it's not already beginning to happen. Now look at the players. They'll call it from the A to Z, or the Amazon to Z, if you will, with Disney, Netflix, Sony, Woot, and so many others, MX Player, and several more that are there in the market. With 20 major languages in India, regional content is getting companies to penetrate deeper into the market, and that is a big opportunity that is coming up as well. The share of regional language consumption on OTT platforms is expected to rise substantially, and it could go past that market HSM, or Hindi-speaking markets, as they say. So that gives you a broad picture and sets up the interesting discussion over the next hour or so. So whether you're associated with the industry or want to understand the dynamics of the action-packed industry, you'd want to stay with us and listen to the experts. So let me first introduce the stellar lineup for the speakers. Danish Khan, head SonyLIV, Sony Entertainment Television and Studio. He joins us. Sunil Rayan, president and head Disney Plus Hotstar. Partha Sinha, he's president of the Advertising Club and president also for BCCL. Kranti Gada, chief operating officer at Shemaroo Entertainment, and Kumar Sahu, MD and lead communications at Accenture. Thank you everyone for joining us and taking out the time for this so important conversation. First, if I can request Saurabh Sahu to put the entire picture in context. Saurabh, the floor is all yours, but just one point for the viewers, if you can mention in a couple of lines while you're speaking, why is the OTT market, though it accounts for less than 10% of the entire market, so important? If you can touch upon that point as well.
Sure. Thank you, Ashutosh. And a very warm welcome to all the panelists today. I think being a huge movie buff and now OTT web series buff, great joy in terms of being a participant in such a discussion. And therefore, I also, whilst I'm one of the panelists here, I would also be speaking on behalf of a consumer of OTT platforms. And Ashutosh, maybe I'll come to your question towards the end once I just give a context for the benefit of the panelists as well as our audience today. OTT platforms are here to stay, right? At the end of the day, now with the pandemic, with the kind of differentiated content and consumption, in fact, one of the biggest beneficiaries of the entire 3G to 4G wave have been the OTT platforms, which have actually taken the bull by the horns in terms of better bandwidth, more resilient networks, and the 4G to 5G revolution, I'm sure, is going to be very well utilized by the OTT platforms as well. In terms of the three tenets, which I just wanted to touch upon for the benefit of my panelists also, which I believe are key differentiations that OTT platforms can create today, right? And in that manner, therefore, also increase the 10% market that Ashutosh spoke about. I think three things: content, experience, and pricing. Right? And from an India scenario, I think these three things from a list of the various other parameters, encapsulate the holy grail of OTT, if I may call it. Simply said, in terms of content, content is the king. For OTT players, right from creation of content to discovery of content for the consumers and the consumption of the content. Right? So the entire supply chain, if I may call it, from creation to discovery to consumption, needs to be really looked upon holistically by OTT platforms. How can you therefore create a more seamless experience for your content creators as well as for your consumers? How do you look at India and Bharat? Right, the whole point about regional content and getting the entire aspect of regional content in play is something we have to keep in mind while generating as well as providing content for consumption. But I think in effect, I think one of the researchers that Accenture did some months back, and we interviewed close to 6,000-7,000 consumers globally, and many of them in India. They spoke that almost 60% of the content that is available on any OTT platform is not relevant to them, right? More than 60 to 70%. So apart from getting in the various aspects of the content relevance is something which therefore becomes very key. The second part of experience, again, I think very clearly, as the name suggests, again, with the, if I refer to the same Accenture research, over 70% of the consumers we spoke to said that they were frustrated with the viewing experiences, right? Whether it is in terms of finding the right content. A lot of people spend more than 6 to 8 minutes just finding out what content to watch, right? Now, a challenge for some of us on this panel is how do we therefore mitigate that experience and make it far more enriching? How do we move from being an initial experience to an interactive experience to an immersive experience? With 5G coming on the horizon, there will be aspects of making it far more immersive using augmented and virtual reality. And therefore, how do you create that kind of an experience? Lastly, I think there is a huge scope for using data and analytics in this area to look at segmentation of one. Every single consumer is unique. Right? Every single consumer there has to be in a personalized experience of sorts. So that's the gamut of experience that we're looking at. The third thing, and the last one of the tenets that I was looking at is obviously pricing, and to have the right, I would say, business case even for the OTT players, and to create the right pricing, we're looking at 2-3 areas here: innovation and bundling. Can we learn some aspects of FMCG and create those sachet-related pricing, where a consumer can even pay for a single watch, right? Pays for today we have in music where you can pay for a single song, right? So can there be various innovations in pricing, which can therefore mitigate the divide between India and Bharat and get you more number of consumers onto the platform? I think if I just sum it up overall, therefore, I think these 3 key tenets look at various aspects. Lastly, touching upon Ashutosh, your question about, and a very relevant question is, while it is still only a 10% of the overall market, is I think on both the aspects, the content providers and OTT platforms also have to mature and do more work on these 3 aspects of content, experience, and pricing to get that experience coming in for more people to come on board. At the same time, I think the Indian audiences is also maturing in terms of omni-channel content across per se. So I think both both of the consumers will have to walk some distance in terms of accepting to pay for this content, right? And in India, it's important that you pay for the right content. So the consumers have to walk some distance in terms of getting the mindset that they have to pay for the right content, and obviously to consume on OTT platforms. And likewise, the OTT platforms will have to walk that mile in terms of providing the right content, experience, and pricing to make this work. With that, I think, sorry if it's been a long monologue, but I hope it touches upon the right key points for us to take this forward. Back to you, Ashutosh.
Thank you so much, Saurabh, for putting this in context. Danish, and let me first come to Danish and then to Sunil for the glut that we are seeing. And you're saying that really is what part of what Saurabh spoke about. How does the consumer reach out, and how does the consumer identify the best in that glut? Danish, if you can go first. You're on mute, Danish, if you can.
Yes. Ashutosh, I don't believe there is a glut to start with. I think first we must understand this country is huge, 140 crore people. And presently what we are producing as a OTT content. So there was content always produced. There was content produced by various language cinema. And there was, which were around 180 minutes, 120 to 180 minute content pieces. And then there was television content that we have been seeing. Okay. The dynamics of television content was slightly different, and it resulted in a kind of content. What OTT has created is a very unique market. It provides us with large margin because it's direct to consumer, and it has a long tail because of it being a digital asset. So what OTT has created is that you can profitably reach out to a niche. And India, every niche is actually mass. Every niche is bigger than some European countries overall population. So my thing is that we have just started this journey. In last, I think the ones that we started, we are the youngest among the big ones. Hotstar started around 2014, Amazon, Netflix. I think it's a 6-7 years journey. And to create a good content, you need 2 years of production cycle. So I think as an industry, we have just about started. And you will see from this industry, a lot of great content, because for the first time, you have a flexibility, which perhaps a cinema and TV doesn't provide. Therefore, I think we'll get to see much varied content which touches a particular segment very closely, and they should, obviously, like Saurabh rightly said, obviously it has to be priced to a particular segment. I think the industry will evolve to address that. But I think it's a great time for Indian content. And it also gives us an opportunity as a content industry to not just reach out to people within India, where there is a huge potential, because for longest time, there was great Malayalam content, nobody noticed. It's only when OTT came, you are able to discover great Malayalam content. And, I'm sure Sunil will agree to it. A lot of this South Indian content are consumed by people across India. And I believe if we continue to produce good content and expand our experience, in the next 5 to 10 years, Indian content will be spoken in a global scenario like Korean content is spoken today. So I think it's a great time to be in this industry.
So interesting, Sunil. Given what Danish had to say, well begun is half done, you'd say that?
I would agree with Danish that we are in early stages, right? When it comes to original content, when it comes to OTT. But, the other way also to look at OTT is it's a form factor for viewing. And for example, I'm sure Sony has the same thing. We have it. We also have a lot of TV content that people see through OTT as well, right? So if you look at it from a form factor perspective, I 100% agree. The biggest challenge is how do we present the right content to the right user? And it's become a stage right now where I'm sure a lot of people know about the content, but they don't know where it's playing right now, right? So that is a big challenge across the industry. And it's something that's a big focus for us, right? Which is how do you present the right content to the user at the right time? And there's a lot of factors that actually go in, right? There's obviously what have people watched in the past, right? Which kind of narrows a little bit of potentially things that they want to see. There is time of day. What do people watch at what time of day? There is, the type of genre that you like. Are there adjacencies between two genres like action and maybe comedy to a certain extent? Or women and romance movies. So we look at different ways to connect how you can, so I'd put in a nutshell, one, content discovery. And then the second issue is not just what do people want to watch when they come in? Like, what's the next thing that they want to watch? That's another challenge, right? Because you don't want to just give them one thing and then say, okay, go fish in the ocean for the next thing, right? You kind of want to present that to them. So it is a big area of focus for us. And, to the point that also Danish raised, we want, there is some content that are hidden gems, etc. So part of our job as a platform is like, how do you make the content how do you make the discovery work really hard to pick the right content as well, right? Which other platforms could not have given, or the previous generation platforms. Because in this way, as you go deeper and deeper into consumer tastes, they are not one and the same. There's high differences in taste. So it really gives us, from an ROI perspective, not just say, let's keep investing in new content, but can we get value from existing content because we have new users? For a content which may be new for majority of the users, then the old content could be new for some users, right? So you can find ways to also drive. So that's the business angle of it, which is we can also get better ROI from a content perspective. So, in a nutshell, I would say content discovery is something that is continuing to evolve. I think it's only going to get better and better. I think one of the points that Saurabh raised was, with more data, with more signals, it'll only get better. And I think the consumer is going to benefit at the end of the day.
Okay, the consumer is going to benefit. Another important issue, Partha, is how does the advertiser see it? How does, while getting consumers one part of it, you get the mass, but how do you get the advertisers and the advertising money and the marketing interest in such content? Is that change happening enough?
Advertisers are getting a little worried. There is AVOD, but there is also content that can be consumed by paying money. So you don't need an advertiser necessarily to fund for the content platform. I mean, that was the thing of print and television, and even to a great extent cinema, because like if you didn't get into the depth of it, you didn't know how much support actually comes from like running the theaters from advertisers. But here is one platform where people can pay money directly and bypass the entire platform subsidization model. But eventually, I'll just link it back to something which the OTT sort of, if I say, kind of revolution, which has marked in India. If it's all about giving value to consumers' choice or viewers' choice. If you remember long back, we had to go to a theater and buy tickets on black, which means, I want to pay money, but I still can't see the film because I'm at the mercy of, nexus between theater owners and black marketeers and like distributors. So from there, it came to television, where, I like remember the early days of television, of Sony Star. I mean, I was a part of that world at that time. So I know it suddenly democratized content, and big stars like Amitabh Bachchan and all started making appearance, and everybody said, Amitabh Bachchan can come to my house. I don't necessarily need to go to a theater. It's not that exactly that happened, but the feeling was that today, but then still there was a kind of, people were still subject to something called timing. So I mean, I am an European football consumer. Ask me, every European football season, I almost have a marital discord, because all matches start anywhere between 12 and 2. So in the morning. So, but then OTT came, and that became history. What Sunil has been talking about, and Danish's channel also does. Danish's OTT also does it. That a lot of television content is given through OTT, so people can consume it at their own sweet time. So again, the maximum value is given to people's own choice. So similarly, pricing also is a choice which is left to consumer. So this is interestingly becoming better and better, and the dynamics will only, as we go forward, we'll see how it opens up, because there would be a set of people who would say, I don't want to see anything which subsidizes me. I want to see only, I want to pay for the content and watch it. So that's going to be an interesting dynamics. So this is a space which, like in terms of, see today, even large internet companies, I don't want to take names, but they're also totally dependent on advertising, right? OTT is one place where there are companies which has been there all over the world, which doesn't even have an advertising department. There are companies across the world. There are a lot of European companies which don't even have an advertising department because they don't need it. So this is an interesting development. So basically, people will decide what they want to watch, and a lot of nervous glances are around this platform, especially from the advertisers.
Okay. Kranti, the old line from Bollywood that I've heard is "Picture abhi baki hai." This looks like picture abhi shuru hui hai.
Yeah, absolutely, Ashutosh. I think I would echo what Danish said, that this is just the beginning. I would say it's probably the first 100 meters in a 100-mile, or in a marathon for the exam. I mean, another word. So I would say, if you see the OTT hierarchy or ecosystem, if you at the base, very, very base, we have YouTube, which is the most mass OTT of sorts. It comes embedded in 80% of the handsets, and that's the first experience that people have. And the ABCD, which you referred to, I think, sometime back, in terms of the lower stratas of the society. Today, they are getting just about learning how to use it, experience it, watch, and kind of the low data tariffs help that. The next layer comes, I would say, the freemium OTT players, where most of the broadcasters, I would say, sit in that space where you get in a viewer by offering AVOD content and keep coaxing that AVOD consumer to come on to SVOD. And then at the top of the food chain, of course, we have the pure SVOD players. But I would still say, if you look in terms of adoption by the consumer, we have a long way to go. We also have a long way to go. Another thing, actually, I would pick from what Danish said, that there are so many, India is a heterogeneous country, and each cohort is a country by itself. And I think the exploration within each cohort, I think we've probably just barely scratched the surface. So if I were to draw a parallel to the, television industry, so around 95, if you looked at any channel, even a ZTV or a Star, it had everything. It had news, it had entertainment, it had music, it had movies. And it was primarily, dominantly, in fewer languages. And then today we have mass classification over there. You'll have, just an English news channel or a regional news channel, and, multiple regional channels, etc. So we have this whole journey, even on the content and consumer cohort side, to see ahead of us. And I think in a couple of years, we'll stop, probably being so starstruck by it. It will be mainstay. And also on the digital advertising side, I would say that already, digital advertising is at par with television advertising. In the pandemic, we've seen that come through. And if you talk to any advertiser today, nobody talks of a separate digital plan. Along with the main media plan, there is always a digital plan. Of course, today it may be YouTube, maybe the prime, mainstay, and the other OTTs are yet to be a top up currently. But I think advertising on digital is also, I would say, absolutely, I would say there may be a very rare brand who's not using it today. So, but yes, over there also a lot of experimentation with interactivity, addressability, etc., yet to happen. So it is the very first step, I would say. And yes, picture abhi baki hai.
Acha, baki hai, theek hai. So Danish, in terms of, so one of the big things, for while the spread is there already in place, some would say, largely look at the kinds of categories which also Kranti referred to. Now we're talking depth, as IPL experience told us going multi-language has helped. Similarly, for some of the categories, you look at newer categories being created. Combat sport, for example, has happened for a while on Sony, you look at that. Or look at laughter as a category. How are those little innovations driving the market, Danish?
I think in absence of any physical distribution constraint, okay, each content has an ability to create a market from across the world. Okay, say for example, in TV era, if I would create if you look at how TV is segregated, you have a Hindi GEC, Hindi news. Either you are divided by language, geography, or by content types. Okay, the basic idea is create a homogeneous set of viewer, create a business plan around it, and give them more of the same. Right, that's what television is about. Okay. In digital, because you don't have any physical limitation, so to say, and your ability in a digital world to reach out people differently across the world is there. What you do is create content. You create a money heist, or you create a Squid Game, okay, where there is a primary audience, and when the appeal goes to a larger set of audience, it travels, and it travels. It can travel. We have seen it with some of this international blockbuster. They can really travel, and when you discover a particular content, you discover that culture, you discover more, you want to know more of it, you watch more of that. The reason I'm spending a little time on this is that this is that opportunity for us. Okay, it will create its own market. The great content will create its own market, and it will create a market over a period of time. Unlike a cinema, the focus is not over the first weekend. You need to have, say, 2 lakh people walking and paying 300 rupees each for it to be a hit. Here, there is a long tail. People consume, like I'll give you an example of Scam. I think while a lot of people in Bombay got excited in the first week of Scam, and we were a relatively young OTT at that point in time, it took us 3 months to reach out to a kind of critical mass in India. And then it is still giving a subscription to us. This model, to my mind, will help not just to create new content, or it will give a lot of confidence to creator and platform like us to back some great brave content. Also, it will improve consumers' ability to discover content. They can discover multiple languages, they can discover multiple countries. I think these are the collateral benefit that both consumer as well as the platforms and the content creator will have. Obviously, technology will play a great role, like Sunil was saying, discovering it, having custom page for each one of them. There are a lot of other things. There will be model which will be advertising driven model. There will be a model driven by, something will be subsidized by advertising, and there will be segment which doesn't need subsidy of advertising. They will buy straight and without advertising consume it. I think all kind of model will coexist. But what it will certainly do is that it creates a relationship between content creator to consumer directly without any middleman. And it also allows a direct feedback to us from a content creator as well as the consumer. And I see this will revolutionize the content. I think that's one thing that I look forward to, that this particular OTT in its full play will completely revolutionize this content industry and content economics.
Okay. Partha, so did you raise your hand? Sorry, I missed it earlier. You wanted to come
in fact, good that Danish brought this up, and this is quite interesting because the advertising model itself will also change. What passes off as digital advertising is just a rip-off of television advertising or a print ad. They take a print advertising and put it as a display ad, or they take a TV advertising and put it as a digital video. It doesn't exactly work like that because the content itself is working differently in OTT. The example of Squid Game that Danish said, I want to give an example which I don't think everybody would know, but people in this panel may know. What the guys were wearing in Squid Game, that white slip-on from Vans. It was a placement. It was not by coincidence. What happened to that brand? Anybody knows the number that whether the campaign was effective or not? The sales of white slip-on Vans went up by 7,800%. It has never happened in the history of any brand. So this is a game changer, right? This is a complete game changer because Squid Game itself is a game changer, right? I mean, it's a hardcore Korean stuff which we had no idea of Korean society. We lapped it up like, as if it has gone out of style and is happening in my next door. So the power of the content, therefore, would even drive the idea of product promotion and product placement. And unfortunately, when people have taken the standard and lazy route, I would say, of taking a television commercial and put it onto a digital video, it has made the viewing experience really bad. I don't want to take names of brands, but there was a time when there would be videos which would come off of Hindi movies, and there would be ads coming below that. Then slowly the ads started going up and up. So there would be one scroll, second scroll. Then finally, Amitabh Bachchan will be speaking from behind 10 scrolls. You will not be able to see his face. And he will say, "Mere paas maa hai," and there would be 10 ads in front of that. Some of the platforms, the watching experience is that you have to just shut down that video because, in the quest of making money, but not, adapting to the medium, people have used lazy thinking, and lazy thinking would be the death of brand and advertising. Vans is a great example. 7,800% has never happened in the history of any brand.
Yeah, Kranti. You're making
what I see is that, it's the hit miss ratio over there, is very, very off. Like, we've probably had 10,000 not so successful brand placements to have one Vans, while, the regular GRP based or viewership based advertising is more predictable, more plannable, etc., etc. So I think maybe, and you can pay for it more logically also. So maybe advertisers and platforms and publishers will also have to think of very innovative ways to price these things or to execute these things, maybe even with the help of technology, where you can probably replace brands within the, I don't know what, but I don't think you can apply regular, to such innovative models, you can't apply regular metrics, etc.
Yeah.
See, this is the point I was making. That was not just a product placement example I was giving. If you go through the Vans document, you will see that how they had thought it through. Because the kind of product it is, the kind of thing it represents, it kind of sat very well with the idea of Squid Game. So what I mean by lazy thinking is that majority of the time, people actually look for the cross button on, like advertising in digital. Majority of the time, people are looking at how I can minimize it or how I can get rid of it, because it's created for another medium altogether. You do a 30-second ad, it was created for television. I understand it's much easier to do, but what I'm saying is not necessarily everything will be product placement. But there are 500 other examples of how people use pre-rolls, like in a very, very interesting manner. There are brands which have done pre-roll, which has been viewed more than that video itself. There are case study. Last year, the Cannes Grand Prix winner was a case where the pre-roll was watched more than the video. So I'm saying people need to think very differently because now the consumer is the boss. We have to acknowledge the fact that the choice is with them. If we don't play to their demand, people will still look for the cross button. That little cross button is the most popular thing in digital advertising from the consumers. I mean, being from the advertising side, I have to acknowledge that.
Okay, I agree with
I was just coming to you, Sunil. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with Partha. I think the onus is on us to continue to innovate and provide a non-disruptive experience to the user, right? So, and the good news is, these digital platforms that we all have provide that ability, right? Anytime we launch something that is an innovation, we do an A/B test to say, what was the user experience as a result, right? And that's kind of the filter before a format actually gets launched. I also think, there's been innovations in 6-second pre-rolls as opposed to 10 to 20 seconds, right? So those have really improved the quality of the pre-rolls in itself, right? So people don't get annoyed, but they're like so interesting because you're really trying to stuff a, fabulous story in 6 seconds. But I do think there will be more monetization models in addition to just advertising that will come in. I think Danish and Saurabh also talked about microtransactions, for example, as opposed to pure subscriptions. Advertising, you can ask permission from the user whether you want to watch something to maybe get an extra day. I mean, at the end of the day, the more user choice that we give, the better. So I agree in part with somebody, don't just provide a disruptive experience without giving the option. Like, for example, even in our service, we now have, when an ad is playing, we give, do you want the ad-free option? So it's a choice that people can actually make, as opposed to you're shoving it down. Somebody saying you need to use it. But I think the consumer should be in the middle or the center.
About the larger picture of global opportunity as well as the tech, the way it is defining it, that also becomes a very big factor. for the growth in the coming years? How you did refer to that, but if you can give a sense of how could that be monetized and how could that be the opportunity to grow? Saurabh, that was for you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
See, I think, and you know, I echo this point of Danish when he, and I think everybody agreed to the point, which said, you know, it is still in a, the OTT industry is in a very nascent stage, right? Now, for any industry which is in the nascent stage and growing, the technology typically has to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the curve, right? If it is ahead of the curve, then it will help the industry also to kind of expedite and take those leapfrogs and jumps per se. If the technology lags, then it pulls the industry down also together. If I have to expand that point, OTT platform by the nature of the industry itself is technology centric, right? It's made on digital platforms. Now the way to take to answer the technology question is in 2 forms. A, make the technology in such a manner that it is extremely seamless and user friendly, right, to consumers. Secondly, give lots of choices to consumers, which will help you to monetize per se. One radical thought, which I may just want to put in terms of the, or not, may not be as radical per se. You know, there was, I think there is a series, there is a Black Mirror in Netflix came out with this particular option, wherein the consumer could choose a certain point in time and answer questions. Based on the responses, the story would move in a different manner, right? So they had multiple cuts created in terms of how the story would actually move based on the responses of the consumer. It is heavily interactive. So you are actually making the consumer as a part of your viewership experience. In gaming, technology has helped you to essentially monetize it by giving you so many multiple options of you know, paying for a lot of things in gaming, right? So if you want to move on to the next level and so on and so forth. If you can use technology in a manner which gives more choices to consumer and helps you to monetize. For example, you are watching a particular series. Now there could be an option where a consumer can choose whether they would want the series to go in a more comedy way or in a more thriller way, right? Based upon the choice you make, and you pay for it, right? You really, if you want to really see the content in a manner, you pay for that to have that particular choice. Now, technology can therefore help you to do a lot of these things to bring it together. See, the content is created. Content is king. Nothing to replace it. You know, you need to have the right content in place. But if the platform and technology can therefore come together and create such kind of choices, I think in that case, you know, Indian OTT industry can be the bellwether for the entire global opportunity, which is on the table.
Okay, Danish, in terms of, we did refer to that regional content part of it and the kind of depth it can provide. What are the early, so since you mentioned that you are the youngest among the bigger ones, what are the initial feelers or initial experiences you have in terms of some of those regions? And also, if you can refer, television had a certain particular kind of content. How is the OTT platform, how are the OTT platforms putting together different kinds vis-a-vis what content we saw on television?
I think one of the biggest differentiator, having spent so much time on television and digital, is television never had a real measurement of success or failure. You know, so you are dependent on a very small size samples, which will you know, which will give you a picture. Like the entire television industry is the content creation is built around the so-called bestseller, which comes from a very small survey. Okay, so you know, over a period of time, what happens is that because of that, every weekly you get a survey report on which you know, advertisers put money. You end up doing, or you know, the industry starts following the last success. You know, the last success formula being repeated at some point in time become a stagnation, reason of stagnation for a lot of creative exploration in television industry. What I think is the biggest blessing for us as far as digital is concerned, you actually see who are watching what, at what price they're watching, what is their size, where they are, what is their potential. I think the fact that you're getting the real feedback, okay, from the consumer, as a maker, we are much more surer about the kind of content that we do or we experiment. Obviously, you have to experiment, you will take some calculated risk, but those calculations are real. In television, despite 25 years, you still depend on last week's, it becomes stereotype. I think if you look back on television at some point in time, American television, a couple of decades back, actually rediscovered themselves, through pricing, through a certain amount of pricing strategy, not in terms of measurement strategy. Here, with both pricing and the measurement being real and pricing being flexible, I think it gives you that much real feedback for the kind of content that you're producing. And I think this is what even the great content creator in our country are reacting to, because they know exactly what is working, what is not working. In fact, from a data point of view, when the story is not moving, there are scenes, a lot of people might just leave. You have the real data. I think real data itself improves storytelling to a great extent. So I think it's quite positive that way.
Okay, well, one last question. So I understand that you have to leave, Danish. We won't hold you back. A lot of people would want to know, people who are listening to you and who are watching, what are some, maybe one or two innovations that's coming their way, people who are watching?
No, I must tell you, as far as LIV is concerned at this point in time, there are enough challenges, and I'm talking about my platform from a point of view ensuring that we have great streaming. I think one of the biggest challenges that we are facing is that India is a market of very uneven connection, bandwidth and devices, So at a device level, at a connection and bandwidth level, to give a kind of differentiated experience, because some people are watching it in a very I would say in mobile, somebody is watching in a very advanced large screens, same content. They are consuming the same content in different devices. The areas or the places where they're watching have very different internet speed. I think a lot of our energy at this point in time is towards addressing this issue. That's number one. The second bit, I won't be able to tell you what is the innovation, but I'll tell you the challenges that we are facing is the one that Sunil spoke, and I think at some level, Partha, Saurabh, and Kranti also spoke about it, is you have one screen, okay? Nobody minds spending some time on discovery, okay? But finite time, it can't be infinite, So getting as much data of consumers so that we should be able to customize and give them something which they are most likely to watch is the second big challenge that we have. Especially, platform like say Hotstar and Sony, they have television content, we have sports content, we have originals, we have multiple language. It becomes even more difficult, if somebody is putting only content, original content, it's perhaps at a genre level you can work. For a Hotstar or for SonyLIV, people come for cricket, soccer, Kapil Sharma, Anupama. They come for different reason, okay? And then we have to ensure that in next 2, 3, 4 minutes, we should give them something meaningful for them to stay. I think that's the second big challenge. So these are the two biggest challenge in my mind. I would say the industry is trying to address, and we as a part of industry are doing whatever we can do to get some solution quickly.
Okay, we won't hold you back, Danish. Thank you so much for taking out the time despite your tight schedule. Thank you indeed for joining us. Thanks. While we continue the conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sunil, Saurabh, Partha, and Kranti. See you.
So Sunil, I'd like to come to you then. Taking this content global, what are some of those big things that the industry should be watching out for and which will really multiply the presence for this content?
I mean, it's a great question. And to me, it's already proven, right? Which is content goes global. Now, if you see, many of you in this call, I'm sure the consumers know Korean content has taken off. Why did it take off? Because the world is flat now. You can have one platform that is global, like a Netflix or a Disney Plus, and it gives access to a lot of people for a specific content. The second thing that's also happening is people are willing to watch things not in their native language. That is a big trend that's happening. Whether it's a French show or an Israeli show or a Korean show, people want to watch it in local language. We're actually even seeing it. We just launched a Korean content called Snowdrop, which is going to be translated in Hindi, and it's doing really well, right? So that's the second thing. I think there's a trend around people saying, as long as it's high quality, the story resonates, I can watch it. And to me, the third, the beauty of how stories need to come out is it needs to connect the world, right? Like people can relate. Maybe Korean stories or Indian stories is not too different than some corner of another part of the world. So it actually bridges connections, right? So I think the more that, the platform gives access to creators. I also think you said it, right? Small is the new big. I actually personally think what this streaming and OTT has done is it's been great for creators, that it is not just a place where only big actors need to come, or big storytellers or big producers. It's opened up because remember, this is not appointment viewing. It is you at your own time, and everybody's time is different. So it just creates a lot more windows where people want to watch it. And as a result, people are more hungry for more content that aligns with them. So as a result, on the supply side, it just opens up all the possibilities. So I hope with India, there's more creators that come in, because we have, every platform, like all the large platforms right now are purely global, right? We are global. We reach, in fact, we're going to a lot more countries later this year as well. I think we'll be at hundreds of countries right now. So I just think we should encourage more and more of creators to create things global. Comedy is global, thrillers are global. The thing that's only different, I would say, we're also testing a lot of reality shows. We haven't really seen reality go global, but maybe there's a new genre that will come. Even reality shows could go global, right? So but I think this the OTT, I feel like there's a lot of promise for India to really, India's creative community to be far more distributed and far more widely accessible across different parts of the world.
Okay, Partha, one question about the aggregators part. How can the OTT aggregators emerge as a differentiator in a very fractured streaming landscape that we see today? Would you want to take that big picture view?
Yeah, see, there are 2-3 problems there. The first problem is lack of technology parity. That will always act as a deterrent, because unfortunately there is very different level of technology amongst different OTT players. Number one. Second is, contrary to popular belief, when they say India is an internet market, it's actually a mobile internet market, right? It's not really an internet market. I mean, calling India an internet market is a bit of a misnomer, because I was involved with launch of Jio. So we knew at that time very clearly that that's the market, and that's the market which will open up. And like, I think every player in this OTT genre is grateful to Jio. I'm sure Sunil and Kranti and you all will agree that it is basically thanks to mobile this has happened. Now, keeping technology parity, mobile, and like the kind of content variation, I would say, because there would, with all said and done, there would still be different kind of preference in different region, in different tier cities. There would be preference. So the aggregators' problem today is they don't have a single, like dynamic data source through which they can decide. A. B is, second point is, even if you find that, you don't know how to match all technology together, so that even if you do ad serving and stuff like that, not every platform would be able to take all kind of ad serving. So I think aggregation is a long way off, if you ask me currently. I don't know whether Sunil or Kranti agrees. Aggregation would be slightly, ahead in time, but the way technology is evolving, we don't know. It can happen in next 1 year, 2 years. We don't know. Yeah, yes, Sunil, you were saying.
No, I agree with you. We all said we are in the early innings, right, of OTT. I feel like there's so much to explore. The age of aggregation is a little bit far ahead, in my view, at least.
It will take time.
Kranti, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, the aggregation piece, I think the platforms and aggregations have a love-hate relationship. Or every platform wants to go direct to the consumer, but, there are definitely roles that an aggregator can play in terms of making it convenient to the consumer versus the consumer having to own 5, 6, 7 apps at a reasonable price, discovery of content across apps, as well as pretty strong base of consumers, frictionless or lower friction to collect payment. Today, the biggest challenge with all of the OTT players is basically the cost to collect payment or a consumer is probably sometimes as high as the first year subscription or, first year's value that you will get out of the consumer. And every OTT has to do it multiple times with the consumer. So there are definite benefits, but definitely on the downside, we lose control of the consumer. We get kind of crowded in by the other OTT players. That one-on-one relationship, which we think is so unique on digital versus television, gets compromised. But I feel sooner or later, I think several very credible players are making attempts at aggregation in their own way, and I think in the mid to long term, there probably will be solutions which will help the whole market scale. Today, all said and done, if our potential is 100, we're probably 5. So, when we probably reach 25, to the leap from 25 to 50, maybe on the back of aggregators at that point in time.
Okay, scale. That's a very interesting word you've raised, because just look at a few years, Saurabh, a few years ago, we had 13 mobile telephone companies. And from there, we are now down to 2 of those big ones and 2 others. Pretty much that crowd you're seeing in the OTT market, how will the market pan out, sir?
I think great question. And, I've also given a lot of amount of thought. My sense is there would be some degree of consolidation, but not as extensive as you would see in telecom or some of the other industries per se. Telecom for that matter, or let's say petroleum for that matter, or even insurance for some extent, are industries which have a very high involvement of the consumer, right? So these are extremely capex, they could be capex intensive, high consumer involvement in the industries. And therefore, by nature, they might just consolidate to 2, 3, 4, 5 big players. OTT, I think, will thrive on diversity. It will thrive on having large number of players in the market, because there is no dearth of content creators, right? So a lot of content coming in. Anybody who has good content today, you may have heard about the creator economy, right? Wherein any creator tomorrow, I could be just a person who has a great story. I could just put it up together on YouTube, create my own channel, which is happening today, and that becomes equivalent of an OTT platform for people to go and consume content on the budget area. So it will be heavily democratized. There will be certain degree of consolidation happening per se. Even aggregation is also a way of consolidation. And the aggregation question that we all spoke about, and I do agree it is some distance away, but I think it is inevitable, because consumers would want to, at a certain degree point in time, to say that if I want to watch a thriller genre across platforms, somebody has to give me that one single port of choice, right? I can't be going to multiple platforms, having multiple subscriptions, and trying to consume the same kind of content there. So I think aggregation will be inevitable in some sense, which will lead to some degree of consolidation. May not be to the extreme to a telecom, but I think it will kind of balance it out in some manner.
Okay. There are some questions that have come in from the viewers. So if we can just toss a few of them, Sunil, if I can take first one for you. This is a question coming from Karan Lakhe, and Karan's question is: the content market is saturated and flooded with offerings on multiple scale. How does one choose a story that promises great ROI as an OTT? How does anyone choose that?
It's a great question. I mean, obviously there's 2-3 ways to do that, right? One, the trailer it makes it very obvious on what you're going to see. I think the second thing which we've kind of innovated is you can watch, if we release a show, you can watch the first episode of the show for, which is through ad-supported means. And if you like it, then you pay for the second and beyond, right? So it gives you a little bit of a sampling approach. And I feel like a lot of the internet services are about, hey, I want to sample before I taste, or I'll eat the appetizer and then I'll pay for the whole meal, right? So that's the second way that we have started to innovate. This, similarly even on the sports side, right? When a live match goes on, we actually give 5 minutes free. Like, would you want to watch it? Is the experience something that you expect? But we obviously do a lot in terms of marketing of what we do prior to launching some of this content as well, to kind of show what it's about. And then the last thing I'd also say, we, at the end of the day, if you are in the world where you're offering a consumer subscription service, you just don't want to talk about the promise of a specific piece of content. You want to talk about the promise of the slate of content that's available, whether it's library or what it's going to come. So all those things, I would say, generally becomes input into how a consumer makes a decision on whether I should buy a subscription or not, right? So, and do we do the best job of it? I'm sure we can improve it, or I'm sure everybody can, but here are some of the different ways that we, sampling, better trailers, better marketing, give like a window where people can actually watch something. And then also consistently communicate the library as well as the slate, what exists. And hopefully, with those factors, people can make a decision on whether the ROI is good or not.
Saurabh, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, Ashutosh, I think there is another nuance to the question. It also is to how do OTT platforms choose which story would give them a better ROI, right? So, that's, I think,
is that okay? I saw it from a consumer perspective, but
yeah,
it's a fair question from a supply perspective, right? Which is, how do you choose the content? It's interesting. Obviously, based on what we already know about the user and the platform, we know what type of genre works, what type of shows work, right? So that's one input. But to me, never always use history to predict what the future is going to be, something that always plays in our mind. So one, we say, okay, is this going to be helpful to go after existing base of users? Because we're trying to solve two things. We're trying to give existing users, subscribers more. And second, we're trying to get new people as well, right? So we have to think from both angles. Obviously cost plays an element of what we choose. I said, so first genre, then cost. I think the third thing that we consistently ask is like, how is this content going to differentiate? Are we, like for example, right, we have done for the first time medical drama. Is this something new, which many people haven't done before? Will it really create, at the end of the day, it's about creating intrigue, right? So people are interested to watch. We have a tech drama coming out called Escape Life, right? So these are the things that we always look at, which is, sure, there is a mass scale things that we want to get to, which is already in the platform, but that's the other angle that we look at. What's new? Are we changing the game? Are we introducing some sort of innovation into how we buy content? And then there's various other factors, but these, I would say, for other broader buckets.
Partha, there's another question from Sahadevan Vijayan, and this part of the question, he's written a long one, so I'll just take part of that question. Can we not have some viewer rating on the content of ads too, so that the advertiser would really know their content is effective?
Fantastic question. I mean, ads have never been rated, but there's a direct link to whether the ads are working or not. There is a term called effectiveness. The point is, unfortunately, the advertising industry has been built on measuring efficiency. How many people saw it, how many number of times? It's useless, if you ask me. You got to see that what happened to the brand. So effectiveness is far more important than efficiency. And as I always say, that outcome is more important than output. Output doesn't matter. Outcome matters. Your ad may be very pretty, but doesn't make a difference. I think Unfortunately, there is no rating system for advertising. But if there's a rating system, they would create another parallel world of economy. You know, we don't really want that. I think effectiveness is a great way to measure whether an ad is working or not. So I think at the end of the day, people put their verdict by saying whether an ad is working or not. I mean, we don't need to necessarily go through a rating system. And as Danish was saying, we all know what happens to rating system over a period of time. I mean, they don't represent exactly the correct picture always, which is a fact. Real data is real-time data is the data that people should go for.
Sunil, okay, before I go to Kranti, yeah.
Sorry, no, I was just saying, Partha, you know, there has been a proxy called skippable ads.
Exactly.
Which is a good proxy for quality. And, you know, I come from, you know, my past life. It was a great indicator for quality. The good quality thing was not skipped, whereas the quality ads were. So hopefully people can build on that.
Okay, so Kranti, while we're talking some of that, also from your point of view, you know, a 60-year-old company which has so much of content, how are you making sure that people consume what you're offering now and also dip into that rich legacy that you have?
Yeah, I think thank you so much for asking that question. You know, as Shemaroo, we have ensured that we're present across media. So what we also do very, very closely, if very, I would say literally on a daily basis, is seeing what medium is the best to reach the consumer who can consume this content or would love to consume this content. So certain content we feel is television friendly, and you know, we try our best to make sure it is displayed and telecast on TV channels. Even on digital, you know, we actually look at content and say, okay, this is something which consumer would be willing to pay for and can and should sit behind an SVOD, versus you know, content which consumers would enjoy watching, but you know, probably not willing or able to pay for. And you know, we actually use even platforms like YouTube very effectively for that. So for example, we've created a channel called Filmy Gaane and pioneered at that, I would say. Today, Filmy Gaane is the 7th most subscribed YouTube channel in India. It sits at 58 million plus subscribers. It's the 20th most subscribed channel in the world. Every view, every subscriber is organic, and all the content is retro. So it's a music-based channel which we put out old film songs, and we you know, curate the content accordingly. At the same time, you know, we would have the latest movies, which would probably be sitting on a Netflix or an Amazon behind the paywall over there. So for us, what is very, very important is a multi-platform strategy, and making sure that the consumer keeps connecting with our content and our brand on top of it.
Okay, possibly in 2 words, a history and geography approach to the content, if I may say so.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've completely run out of time, but Saurabh, if you can just take a couple of minutes for a word of thanks and summing it up, please.
So thank you very much. This was, I think, a great platform to generally engage with all of you. And I think the audience questions also showcases that this is a topic of wide interest. I think the way Danish started off, or rather Ashu, you started off by laying the context and the topic pretty well. And I think Danish was quite evocative, and he talks so passionately about Indian content being truly having arrived or in the stage of being very well accepted and created. And I think the part about that OTT is still a very nascent, young industry, and therefore it's something which all of us are going to be part of that journey to make this industry really strong. You know, Partha's point about the value always is with respect to the viewer's choice, right? And therefore, that was a nice facet of the way to look at advertising, where you leave the value in the hands of the user's choice. I think Sunil, with your insights typically around how do you basically match the right user with the right price, with the right content, right? And otherwise vice versa, was again something which was absolutely hit the nail on the head in terms of getting the entire strategy right. And Kranti, obviously, I think you have a platform to create something really differentiated, taking a legacy and a very enriched legacy for that matter, and then completely turning around to a new leaf and making it really relevant is something I think which will probably become a bellwether or a benchmark for many such industries to follow, not just in OTT, but even in other segments, like, for example, print or the likes of it. So I think all in all, there is a fair degree of, I think I could say, positive enthusiasm in terms of the industry overall per se. I just wish all good luck and that content continue to provide us with great nuances.
Okay.
Partha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
I just want to say one line, which is this is a creative industry and
Yeah.
it will remain a creative industry. It is the prerogative of the creator and the viewer. Like all other business models have to evolve around it. If the content is not compulsive, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be as smart as you want. You can have as much of data as you want. It will not work. So it's a very beautiful place to be in. The final supply side is in the hand of the creator. Demand side is in the hand of the viewer. Anything else you do is just to facilitate it.
Okay, fantastic line to end that conversation on. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. Wonderful that you could take out time to be with us on the Economic Times for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashutosh.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I really
Thank you.
enjoyed.